So I will watch it play through and then I will give my description. So it's a shot from a apartment nearby. Ah, man, that's just brutal. Hate seeing that. Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Ryan on the Max Afterburner channel. I'm a former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot, Boeing 737 pilot, Airbus A220 pilot. I've flown airliners for many years, and so I wanted to give my take on the Air India Flight 171 crash. First of all, I want to say just love and support and prayers to the family members of those affected. I've got the lights in the background changed to yellow. Yellow is a signal and sign of support. And so I'm sending that to those that lost loved ones, the passengers, the flight crew, and anyone on the ground who's lost their life. They're saying about 242 people on board the aircraft have perished and likely people on the ground as well. So my number one objective for this video is to show support, love, and prayers to all those affected. And then secondly, I want to reassure the flying public that flying is safe. And I'll give my description and breakdown of what I think happened to this Boeing 787. It's a very safe aircraft, 14 years of stellar safety records on this thing. But this video at the end, I will give my full debrief and breakdown of what I think happened, but there will be a full investigation. So definitely check that out. Remember, I'm just a pilot on YouTube. So let's watch the video. Here we go. So I will watch it play through and then I will give my description. So it's a shot from a apartment nearby. Ah, man, that's just brutal. Hate seeing that. Okay, let's rewind to the beginning of the video. So I want you to take a peek right here. So on the Boeing 787, the wings kind of flex and bend up. They come from underneath the fuselage and they flex up. It's a hyper efficient wing and it's very skinny in this picture, which is not what I would want to be seeing right here. Just after takeoff, what's going to happen is there's going to be a pilot flying and a pilot monitoring. So the pilot flying is going to initiate the rotation. In this case, on the Boeing 787, it's a yoke. So they're going to pull back on the yoke, and then the pilot monitoring is going to say positive rate. Once you have a positive VVI, that's your vertical velocity indicator showing that you are climbing away from the runway. Then the pilot flying is going to say gear up. The pilot monitoring is going to reach over and put the gear up, but they're not going to touch the flaps. They're going to leave the flaps where they're at until you accelerate to certain speeds that are dictated by the aircraft that are safe to fly without flaps. Flaps are extremely necessary to fly at low airspeeds in heavy aircraft like this, and it changes the entire shape of the wing so that you can fly at slower airspeeds and still remain airborne. So you have to get faster before you start to retract those flaps. And there's certain settings that you retract the flaps at, and you go slowly. You do it in a synchronized manner where you go one flap setting up, get faster, one flap setting up and get faster. So it's very odd to me to see all the flaps up, because if you're doing some sort of a crash landing type situation, you know you're going to come in and have to glide into a landing. You're going to put the flaps down because you're going to get slower. You're not going to want to stall the aircraft, so you're going to put the flaps down. But in this case, the gear should likely be up because you just took off. I'll give a full description of the map after this. I'll show you the airport diagram, so stay for that. And then I'll give you my official debrief here at the end as well. But we'll step through some possible causes for this situation, and maybe not just what I think, but what is a buzz right now on the internet. So as you can see there, very skinny wing. So extremely skinny wing here. If the flaps were down, you would probably not be able to see the engines at all because those flaps are so massive on the back end of the 787. So it really looks to me like no flaps are down. And then here at the end, the AOA, which is the angle of attack, that looks to me, and the elevator is pitched down slightly. So the elevator is trying to dig in to give lift to get up. The pilots are probably thinking, why are we descending? What's happening here? And so they're pulling back on the yoke, and the aircraft's wing is looking like it's getting more of an angle to it. That's the angle of attack. Also, I want you to look here and see that the aircraft is in level flight. So if there was some sort of thrust disruption with one of the engines, there's likely going to be some yaw. There's likely going to be a little bit of a look to the aircraft like it's pitching or it's yawing to one side or the other. And I don't see that here. So what that says to me is likely both engines are out or both engines are working just fine. So let's continue here. And then at the end game, pilots are just going to start pulling back because you really have no other options. You know, you got to do what you got to do there at that point. Tragic ending for that. I want to take you now to this map of the crash site. So here we are. this is going to be runway 23, where the 787 took off on, and I'll give you a full description of that with the airport diagram in a second. This is the crash site here, this red balloon, unfortunately near a heavily populated area. But I want you to look, and I want you to see how it's a basic straight line off the end of the runway. So again, if there was an engine out situation, like a bird strike on one of the engines or something like that, likely there would be yaw and the crash site would be to the side. But this is basically a direct line from runway 23 all the way down to the crash site. Okay, now let's take a look at Ahmedabad Airport. Here we are. VAAH is the identifier. I want to show you guys the runway, the length, and the likely taxi route of flight 171. So it's an 11,500 foot runway. So I'll draw a line here from the international terminal. I'll just use green. And so from the international terminal, likely going to go from Golf, then Papa, and then Romeo 4, and then back taxi on runway 23, since there's no taxiways that parallel runway 23. And then at the end, they've got this spot lined up perfectly for a 180. And that would be a normal typical way that an airliner would set up. So taking off midfield, that's some of the rumors that I've seen online, doesn't make sense to me just because of this taxiway layout. And then here's the takeoff roll. Fully loaded Boeing 787, you're looking at somewhere between 9,200 and 9,800 feet. So the point of takeoff is going to happen somewhere about here. So there's going to be thousands of feet of runway left over, likely. And then as soon as you take off, you get that positive VVI, you are going to then put the gear up. So a quarter mile off the end of the runway, your gear going to be fully up. Your flaps are going to be down still though, and then you're going to start slowly retracting those flaps. Okay, so now let's get into the potential for what happened. So on June 12th, 2025, this devastating event, it did claim 242 lives, as we discussed before. It's the first fatal crash of a Boeing 787. And in this video, I'm going to dive even more into what potentially happened, how we can prevent this from happening in the future. And then I will also share why air travel remains one of the safest ways to get around, and I'll tell you why. So Air India Flight 171 was scheduled from Ahmedabad's Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport to London Gatwick. The aircraft is a Boeing 787-8, a Dreamliner, and it's registered as VT-ANB. It took off at 1:38 p.m. local time, and then just seconds later, it reached a maximum altitude of only 625 feet before crashing into the Meghani Nagar residential area. It hit a doctor's hostel and caused a massive fireball. The flight crew did issue a mayday call, but communication was lost soon after, obviously due to that fireball. And then tragically, local police reported no survivors from the plane, likely casualties on the ground as well. The crash site showed the aircraft's tail protruding from a building with thick black smoke billowing into the sky. So this was the first fatal crash of a Boeing 787 in the 787's 14-year history. It's a jet known for its stellar safety record. So the investigation will be led by India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau. It's ongoing. We don't have a definitive answer yet, but several theories have emerged, and I'll give those theories and then stay to the end of the video because I will give my theories as a professional pilot. So one leading speculation is possible dual engine failure or significant thrust loss in the plane's General Electric GE-NX engines. Eyewitnesses and video evidence suggest the landing gear remained extended, which we saw in that video at the beginning, and that could point to a hydraulic system failure tied to engine performance, as the 787's hydraulic systems rely on engine-driven pumps. Some unconfirmed reports also suggest the pilots mentioned engine failures in their mayday call, not confirmed yet. That'll probably be coming out here very soon. Another theory posted on X suggests a takeoff performance miscalculation where the plane may have started its takeoff run from the middle of the runway, and we talked about why that's likely not the case, but that would reduce the available length to gain speed and altitude if an aircraft did that. I don't think that's the case in this situation. And then additionally, the aircraft had recently undergone refurbishing due to recent reports, and that raises questions about potential engineering issues introducing during maintenance work. So not confirmed, but anytime a jet comes out of a depot, you want to ask the question, hey, what was the maintenance work that was done? Past Boeing 787 incidents like the lithium-ion battery fires in 2013 or quality control issues with fuselage joins have also fueled speculations about manufacturing or maintenance flaws, though these are not confirmed in this case. So I would ease your mind on this. I personally don't believe this had anything to do with it as far as the maintenance issues or any of the past quality control issues. So what could cause a jet like a modern 787 to lose thrust in both engines? Dual engine failure is extremely rare, but it's not impossible. So one possibility is fuel contamination or starvation, where the engines didn't receive enough fuel due to a blockage or a supply issue. Another could be a bird strike, though at Metabod's weather was clear and no such reports surfaced. Mechanical failures could also be an issue, like fan blade damage or compressor stalls could also play a role. Past GE/NX engine issues, like a 2016 FAA directive about fan ice imbalances, highlighted potential vulnerabilities, but obviously in this case, it was very warm. It was roughly 30 degrees Celsius, so ice not going to be an issue. A more systemic issue could involve the aircraft's electronic system. So the 787 does rely heavily on integrated avionics. If a fault disrupted engine control, it could lead to thrust loss. But again, this hasn't happened at all in the past. And then lastly, maintenance errors during the recent refurbishment could have introduced issues such as improper wiring or hydraulic system faults, though this is purely speculative until the black box data is analyzed. And if there were any system faults like that, the pilots would have seen those and taken care of those prior to takeoff. It's something that we do every day as airline pilots. You step to a jet and there's some issue with it that you have to get checked out. You call maintenance on board, you do certain checks. There's multiple points of contact from maintenance personnel, from the pilots, to make sure that jets don't take off with any system anomalies. So I would be very shocked if this jet took off with any type of anomaly like that. So when it comes to bird strikes, US Airways Flight 1549 did have bird strikes in both engines. So it can happen. Dual engine bird strikes can happen. However, even in the case of Sully, when they were coming in to land on the Hudson, they put their flaps down. And even in the ditching checklist, when it comes to landing, they tell us as airline pilots to put the flaps down to full. Again, that gives you the ability to land at the slowest airspeed. And if you're going to crash land, you want to be going as slow as possible. And then in 1995, an E-3B Century, an AWACS aircraft, did crash at Elmendorf due to ingestion of geese into both engines. Obviously extremely rare, but this aircraft crash landed as well on the departure end of the runway in a similar looking type situation. But if I was a betting man, I would say that even in this case, they kept some of their flaps down to try to maintain that slower flying airspeed. Let's talk quickly about just the 787 in general. The Dreamliner is a marvel of modern aviation. The pilots I know that fly it love this thing. It launched in 2011 with over 1,100 in service worldwide now. It's a long-haul wide-body jet with a range of 13,530 kilometers. It's built with 50% composite material. Again, hyper efficient. It's got carbon fiber reinforced polymers, making it lighter and about 20% more fuel efficient than older Boeing models like the Boeing 767. It's powered by either the General Electric GE/NX or the Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines. These engines are beasts for sure. These engines use advanced technology like ceramic matrix composites for better heat resistance and efficiency. The Boeing 787 features a fly-by-wire control system replacing traditional mechanical systems with electronic signals for smoother handling. It has a high bypass engine design that reduces noise by up to 60% compared to older jets. Its cabin is also pressurized to lower altitudes of 6,000 feet instead of 8,000 feet. That improves passenger comfort by reducing fatigue. And the jet's larger windows can dim electronically. It's got advanced avionics integrated with real-time weather data and satellite communication for safer navigation. And despite its strong safety record, the 787 has faced some challenges. It included a lithium-ion battery fire issue in 2013 that grounded the fleet, and quality control issues in 2021 that halted deliveries. A 2024 whistleblower did raise concerns about improper fuselage fastening, though Boeing dismissed these as not immediate safety risks and investigations were done. Modern jets like the 787 do rely on redundant systems like dual computers, backup hydraulics, and multiple power sources to ensure safety, even if one of those fails. I would feel comfortable flying a Boeing 787. I've just heard great things about them. But this crash is a stark reminder that even cutting-edge aircraft aren't immune to failure, and pilots are a part of that chain. So to prevent future tragedies, the aviation industry must focus on rigorous maintenance protocols. Even if that wasn't an issue in this case, it's just a good reminder to go back to the basics, especially for recently refurbished aircraft. Again, there's nothing saying that that was the case of this accident. It's just a reminder for everyone to go back to the basics. And then enhanced pilot training for low altitude regimes of flight and what to do at the low altitude regime of flight, because that's likely where a lot of incidents can happen, especially if you throw in some type of emergency. So looking at dual engine failure scenarios, that's crucial. Boeing and GE Aerospace are already supporting the investigation, and the black box data will be key to identifying those specific failures. And then investigation into real-time flight data monitoring and predictive maintenance technologies could also catch issues before they even escalate. And then despite this tragedy, air travel remains incredibly safe. Statistically, the odds of dying in a plane crash are less than 1 in 11 million. The 787 has flown nearly 5 million flights with over 30 million hours without a fatal crash until now. Modern aircraft are built with redundant systems, and global aviation safety standards are stricter than ever. Incidents like this are rare, and each one leads to improvements that make flying even safer. So while we mourn this loss, we can all feel confident stepping into a plane. So now you made it to the end of the video. I'll give you my opinion as a professional pilot. So it looks to me, if there was no thrust issues, so let's say the engines were working fine. I can't tell exactly. I don't see a lot of heat signature coming out of those motors here. So I can't tell if there's actual thrust coming out of them. So if there's not thrust coming out of those engines, then obviously something happened that probably confused the pilots. But putting the flaps up anyway, in either situation, whether there's thrust or not, putting the flaps all the way up at a low altitude like this is a death sentence. It's going to make the aircraft stall, or it's going to essentially make it look like there's a loss of thrust, because there will be a sinking sensation inside that jet, even with full power. If you put the flaps all the way up at a low airspeed, the jet's going to sink. It's not going to be able to fly, and you're going to put yourself in a position where it feels like a loss of thrust. So let's just run through a quick scenario. Again, not verified that this happened, but if unfortunately the first officer didn't have a lot of experience and was having a rough day, and the pilot flying was the captain, and the captain called for gear up once the first officer calls positive rate. If the first officer accidentally put the flaps all the way up and left the gear down, now you're in a situation where it's going to feel like a loss of thrust, likely to that captain, because the captain is looking outside, scanning for birds, scanning for other traffic. And as the pilot flying, if it is the captain in this case, that's your job. Look outside, make sure you're accelerating, make sure you're meeting your certain airspeeds. But if for some reason that first officer just reached over and accidentally put the flaps up, it would be a very insidious situation where you might not immediately know what happened until it's too late. So we don't know if this is pilot error yet, but to me, this looks like a situation that could amount to some sort of pilot error if there isn't loss of thrust on both engines. Again, it doesn't look like a loss of thrust on one engine. Looks like a loss of thrust on both engines, or both engines working properly, and then the flaps are up when they shouldn't be up. Gear are down when they should be up. So the configuration is all off. So there'll be a full investigation as this develops. I'll keep you guys posted. Thank you so much for watching. I also want to get a shout out to my dad, Mike Bodie Bodenheimer, who helped me review this situation. We had a phone call prior to this. So Dad, thank you for that information. I appreciate that. What do you guys think happened in this video? Comment below, and then like the video, subscribe to the channel. It'll help me get more safety related information out like this. And then check out this video right here, guys. I think you'll enjoy this video right here. I'll see you on this video. Thank you so much for watching. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as the fighter pilot next door, signing off.